Realize it's starting. I'm Jeremiah Bannister, and this is J.D. Sullivan. I am the host of Paleo Radio in Grand Rapids, and he is the producer of the program, and he's my partner at Progressive Media Partners. And we were asked if we'd be willing to come here to talk about Paleo Radio, what it is, the role that it plays in social movements, and especially how we could be relevant to the people here. And especially because there's so many different ideas at play here. I mean, there's so many different, groups and events and causes and people and pundits and everything else, and interest at stake. And so the question is, how do we become relevant to that? And I think that we have the luxury of being relevant to all of them. Right? It's I guess an easy pitch in a way for us. And so I guess we'll start. I'll let JD talk for a second here about kind of how Paleo Radio came about. We don't want to take forever, but talk about how it came about, and then kind of talk about how maybe you can get involved. We can get involved with you, and that's maybe the better way of saying it. How we can actually become partnered with you in whatever you're doing to try to bring publicity to it, whether it's through radio, whether it's through our website, our Facebook, our Twitter, our various different networks and everything else.
Okay, so he didn't want me to talk very long, which is just like impossible.
Yeah.
Paleo Radio got started before we went on the air at WPRR. Jeremiah had already had a Paleo Radio concept for a radio show, and his politics changed, and we decided to revive Paleo Radio to address religion, culture, and politics from a trans-partisan point of view and change the dialogue that's... Can anybody not hear me? Okay, good. To change the dialogue that's going on in the political culture so that it's less divisive and more focused on getting things done. Of course, we've had people on both sides, left and right, accuse us of being partisan or not really having a position that's going to have any bearing on change because they're so accustomed to operating out of the partisan paradigm. We've been on the air for 70 days, right?
75.
75 days in Grand Rapids, but we're also online and we're on mobile apps, so anyone around the world can listen to us.
I wanted to say, too, that one of the ideas that we had, because we went to school at the same place. We both went to Olivet College, which is a small liberal arts college. And when we first started going, I remember I was all excited about journalism because, Clark Kent, Superman, and all these things, and Spider-Man. And so you think about, well, journalism is fast-paced, and you get to go in and stop the presses and everything, and then you realize the presses have stopped. Right, theoretically, kind of in a symbolic way almost, where media's taking a hit, newspapers are dying. They're going away. And so I remember I went on a field trip, which was the most depressing field trip I've ever gone on in my life. And I figured, field trips are not supposed to be depressing. And so, but we go to the Jackson Citizen Patriot. And once the huge entity, and we go, and the guy is looking totally under the weather, totally depressed, the editor. And he said, I want to show you this first. It's really important. He said, this is the way we need to start the event. So we're just thinking this is going to be great. He said, I'm going to show you the print room. So we go, and it's this big, empty spot. There's nothing in it. It's this massive warehouse with nothing except for on the ground, you have the outline of where the printing press used to be. It's kind of like the person dead on the ground, once they leave the scene. You got the chalk around their body where they were. That's what it was like. And he said, this used to have hundreds of people in here. He said, this place was pumping and moving. He said, this is now gone. And I'm thinking, this is how we start our field trip. I said, this is not good, And then at the end, asking the stupid question of, how if I wanted to get a job as Citizen Patriot, how would I actually go about getting a job? And his answer and reply was, well, you can't. I'm thinking maybe, I look kind of weird, right? Maybe it's like I got long hair, I smell like patchouli, I don't know. And he said, "Oh no, we only accept applications from this specific school, from Michigan State." And so I realized, and we kind of both had this realization, that if we wanted to do something in media, that we're probably not going to get a job in traditional newspapers. And like everything we thought that media was radically changing. Twitter was there, the blogosphere was there, microblogging, Tumblr, you name it, across the board, Facebook. The impact that that's had is dramatic on traditional forms of media. So we sat back and started to think. I mean, we're in the same major together, we're in the same seminar together, and we're trying to think in our mind, what are we going to possibly do that can make sure that we can make a living and that we can make a difference? Like, how do we go about doing this in this point? And so the idea for Paleo Radio came up, and it was actually accidental. I mean,
It was very short period of time it all came together.
yeah, it came together really in a really short period of time. It was meant to be a one-day-a-week program. So all it was supposed to do was making a pitch to the boss and saying, "Hey, would you be willing to have us on for 1 hour, 1 day a week?" That's all we wanted. And we talked for about 2 hours, and it's one of the very few times I've been out-talked by somebody. This guy is just, he's a go-getter. He's like 74 years old, and he's just bam, 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 and my head's spinning. And after about 2.5 hours of talking to him, he said, "What do you think about a 5-day-a-week, 3-hour-a-day show?"
We were stunned.
We were completely stunned.
And, Jeremiah, you were worried about getting work. I wasn't too worried about getting work in journalism, but what I was mainly worried about was not only are the printing presses closing down, and newspapers are cutting back, and going into this profession that is supposed to be dying, which I will also say is not. It's just changing. I was mostly worried about integrity. I was worried about the corporate control of media. I was worried about this is a profession that I am going into, and I'm going to detest it because of all the control, the interest, the censorship, and what actually gets published. And I'm like, this is not a good deal. I could change my major again. I don't know, but our bias is truth, and it's hard to find work where you're working for an organization where, in the established media at least, where that is the primary goal. So I'm real happy that things have turned out. We're not making a living yet, but we are making a difference. So.
Well, and the thing is, that was a concern for me too, because I was willing to entertain ideas that a lot of people said were utopian. And to me, I don't have a problem with that. Like, in fact, I say, make sure you capitalize the U, right? If you're going to call me a utopian, just spell it properly, be grammatically correct, and I'll wear it on my sleeve. I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with a media that marginalizes certain ideas and does so under the pretense, and I think some of them are sincere, that they're providing both sides of the story. There is no such thing as both sides of the story. Okay, and then maybe people say, well, that sounds really strange. It's strange that we say that. It presumes outright that there is one argument here and one argument here, and that's it. It's convenient for a two-party system. That's really convenient. Okay? So there's a whole bunch of ideas. There's a whole bunch of ways for people to analyze and evaluate situations and proposals that we ought to be doing. And instead, we're provided with various alternatives from two different groups that have so many different special interests involved, so many different players at stake and things at stake that are not in our equations. Right? I mean, how many of us have lobbyists knocking on our doors? I don't know. I mean, I don't have lobbyists yet. Right? like knocking on our door. Hey, you need to do this. But so we don't have the lobbyists impacting us. I don't have an election to run for, so I don't need to try to make an appeal so that I can get money from a super PAC. They have all of that at stake when they come up with an alternative, when they come up with an idea. So they pitch you the idea, and then the news, the media says, we need to present both sides. The other side is another group that's being lobbied in the same way. And I said, the idea that we all know this, and yet can't talk about it. Why can't I talk about it? Well, because my boss is GE, right? And so you're totally hosed. And so you can't talk about certain issues that are important, and yet you have to pretend that you're talking about this thing called both sides. So to me, I said, I don't even know. I got to a point in my own life, which was frustrating for a journalism major. I said, I was frustrated in my own life because I couldn't go to news and say, I genuinely, sincerely believe that what I'm hearing is what they actually think is not only okay, what they think is honest to goodness, the best, unadulterated, the best for our political economy. I said, I don't even trust either side at this point, because they're both being lobbied, either side. And I said, how do I as a journalist break free from that? And I said, I want to do a show. And paleo radio, people say, where did it come from? It came from a word I made up. I made up paleocrat. Right? If you look online, the earliest use of paleocrat is me, was my name, is my moniker, because I didn't like being called a Republican, I didn't like being called a Democrat. And so I said, well, what would sound cool for a name online? I said, oh, paleocrat, right? And so it sounded cool. And the idea for paleo radio was an accident on a public access channel, because my co-host at the time didn't show up. So I didn't know what to do, and I said, well, turn everything around, we'll pretend we're on the radio. And I said, people won't know because it's not the normal scene. I said, we're actually turning the cameras the other direction so they're seeing what they never see. And I'll put a headset on and we'll pretend that I'm on radio. And people caught on to it. In fact, it was so successful they started calling the radio station in Battle Creek and asking what time we were on. And they're like, well, it's not even a real show. It's a TV program. They were pretending. And it worked, right? And so paleo radio was there. And you know, that's how it kind of got started. And there's a development in my life. I mean, I don't hide the fact that I have certain convictions that would be outside the mainstream, whether politically, economically, or in regards to religion. And yet, trying to find a venue wherein you can talk in this way and say, with the absolute amount of authenticity, to say, you may like what I have to say. You may be grinding your teeth to the nerve endings because of what I'm saying. But there's one thing when you listen to the program, you can say every moment, and our phrase is, every syllable of every moment of every day. You will know one thing for sure, that I actually believe what I'm saying. That it's not like, well, I've been paid by this group over here to frame it in this particular way and to feed it to you because it's an election year and I hope you like our team. I said, instead, you may not like what I have to say, but you're going to say, hey, that guy's legit. That guy's really telling it like he believes it actually is. So, how does this apply to you? Okay? We have, this is a work in progress, right? Trying to figure out, we're still, it's an evolution of the whole thing. And I said, all right, how do we want to approach it? At first it was like, well, let's just focus on international and national issues. That's cool, because we have people who download our podcasts all over the world. The problem is, you don't get a base at that point of people. And if you're genuinely wanting to see social change and betterment, if you want to see progress, right, not just change, that's ambiguous. If you want to see progress, you have to reach people where they are. So if you just talk way pie in the sky all the time and nobody can actually connect to it immediately, it's a problem. So we decided, well, let's mix in local issues, and then let's start going to local events, and let's start talking to people. And we came up with this really crazy idea to make it so that our show could be treated by various different groups from all different sides of the spectrum to come in and communicate with us and consider us to be a kind of megaphone for them. And to treat our wall like a bulletin board for various different causes. Because each cause has their own Facebook page, Twitter account. And so if you want to find out about that one, go there. If you want to find out about another one, go here. Find out about another one, go here. And you can do that. And I said, or you can post to one place in this area, and you know that people are going there. And the reason why I say using our radio show that way is because we are on every single Monday through Friday for 3 hours a day, live. And then it's replayed again. So we're on from 3 to 6 p.m. We're up against, on the hard right, we're up against one station that plays Glenn Beck, and one station that plays Sean Hannity. And so if you're in the Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, Lansing, Battle Creek, Olivet area, that's where you are. You can listen to Sean Hannity on talk radio, you can listen to Glenn Beck on talk radio, or you can flip through and hear this guy, right? And so, but people know every weekday that they can turn on the radio and they know for a fact it's going to be there. So there is a kind of sustainability, a predictability that is valuable to social movements. Because if people say, well, I want to know what's going on in the area, I want to know what different group is having an event, what, is this playing out? Well, maybe this station's talking about it, maybe. Well, if you want to know that definitely that station's talking about it, and definitely this guy and this guy are talking about it, post on the wall. Because every time somebody posts on the wall, we talk about that article, that cause, that group, and invite them up. And
For the most part.
for the most part, not every, of course, there would be,
There's some things.
yeah, there's some.
One of the challenges, and I'm part of our presentation is I want us to talk about social media, how you use social media, how we use it. But one of the challenges that we have, and it's a big area of my responsibility, is finding guests for the show. So you have events that are going on, stuff that you know about, organizations that you want to get the word out about, send me an email and do the schedule. It helps, having guests on the show helps make the show more interesting, and it also helps promote the values that we all share. So it's not enough for us to read an article and repeat what other people have said. It's more interactive with our listeners to have actual people coming in or calling up and being a part of the show and contributing to what we call the dialogue with the monologue.
Yeah. And that phrase came from a person we call Stan 44. Because every day we say Paleo Radio is the Paleo Radio Revolution, and we're occupying the airwaves from WPRR, and we go into this Occupy the Airwave thing, which, by the way, we own occupytheairwaves.us.
We haven't done anything with it.
We haven't done anything with it, but we have it. Okay, so if people want to get involved in a project of this nature, maybe we can talk about it. But the idea is that it's a dialogue. And I was talking to somebody recently, and they said, man, it sounds, the quality of your show, the timbre of your voice, what you're doing, and the presentation and production quality, we didn't know it was local. They said it sounds like a show that you would be syndicated, and there's a lot of good news about syndication, but we're not going to talk about it now. So it's making waves. People are finding it in different communities, and sharing it with their friends, and then talking to radio stations and talking about it. But one of the things that I said, we're good at making it sound that way. That's being professional. And I said, we understand that if somebody tunes in and I just sound like I'm ho-humming, right? And, okay, what should we talk about now? And if I say, hey, here's the phone number, talk about anything. I mean, literally, guys, just call. I would love, I don't know, please, if I do that, who wants to listen to that? Right? That's ridiculous. That's a guy begging. And so if you sit there and you're just confident in what you do, it provides an impression. And this maybe people say, well, you sound like Saul Alinsky singing this. Fine, whatever. It makes an impression on people, and without thinking about it psychologically, they just think, wow, this is dead on. This sounds like a show that's moving, and the way that they perceive it is different. So I talk to people like, for example, Judge. And I said, all right, this is where it taps into groups here. All different diverse groups, and what I'm saying here can apply to everybody. One of the concerns a lot of groups have is, how do I get visibility? Right? I believe I have a great cause. I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't think it was awesome. I want people to believe in it. I want them to know that there's only 10 of us. Okay? There's a way to make yourself look bigger than you are. And that is to be a voice somewhere. With Occupy, for example, I said, listen, even if one were to do a form of direct action, where you occupy phone lines, that would be a form of direct action. I said, you make it so that, let's say, one person calls, and we talk about Occupy issues that are related in a way, not always specifically, but they stand in solidarity with different beliefs and values and policies that they support. That if somebody called, let's say on Monday, and said, I'm with Occupy Grand Rapids, and then they just talk about the topic in general. They're not promoting Occupy Grand Rapids other than saying that's where they're from. People may hear it and not necessarily notice it. Next day, somebody else calls, a different voice. Occupy Grand Rapids, da-da-da. Next day, a different person. You need 5 people. 5. Okay? One person. After a while, people, while they're driving, listening to the automobile, maybe never went to the Occupy Grand Rapids website in their entire life. All of a sudden, for one reason or another, they say, I had this really weird dream. Right? This weird dream is that Occupy Grand Rapids, and they look it up on Facebook, and bada boom, you got more people. Because it creates the impression that it is bigger than it is, because it's an audible voice that people hear and they identify in their mind with what it is. It doesn't mean you have to be small and say, man, I'm going to trick people. it's making it visible. And when people see something visible, when they hear something audible, it clicks with them subconsciously, and then eventually consciously. He has a pretty cool theory, and I don't know, maybe somebody could dispute the numbers. But say the rule of 27. You know, he says you said 9 times, right? I'm paraphrasing. 9 times you say something before people realize you actually even said it. 9 more times before they say, oh my gosh, what is this? And then 9 more times before they actually go and check it out, right? So you have to have that consistent thing. If Occupy or, if Lee, what you were talking about earlier, if they come on and they do a show, that's really cool. And in fact, when they do the show, it plays live, then it plays at midnight on the East Coast, on the West Coast, our friends in Berkeley and Vancouver, they can hear it at 9 o'clock at night. And then it saves as a podcast, and so people all over the world and people all over the community can download it as a podcast. And sometimes we, turn them into videos on YouTube and we share them on Twitter. That is one time still. So if somebody comes on and says, man, I talked about that one time, and yet nobody came.
Right.
We
ran an ad for a whole week and nobody came to our store.
Yeah, nobody came to our store. But we had a guy who sat, I think, we had a guy who sponsored us, and they were under the impression that if you talk for a week about it, people are going to start coming to your business. And you say, that's not even marketing. I mean, you don't even understand how the human brain works, okay, if that's what you're thinking. And so understanding this ahead of the game, this is brilliant, okay, to know how the human brain actually works before you open your mouth. And say, all right, I know that people, it takes a while. All right, I get it. Right? It takes a while. We all of us have this thing where we can listen to something and then just not even know we just heard it. But then after a while, we know we heard it. And then after a while, we can identify it. And then after a while, we start including it in our conversation. It becomes a natural part of our human dialogue. That is the winner. Because people say, well, word of mouth is a good thing. That's true. But if it's not part of your natural conversation, then word of mouth, you're now somebody peddling something. If I go up to somebody and say, hey, why don't you go to the Occupy retreat with me? And I say that one time. Number one, I only mentioned it one time. What's the likelihood that person's going to go home and spend the time to actually remember the Interoccupational Summit at Circle Pines? What's the likelihood?
Well, and also, people don't listen to a radio show for an entire 3 hours. We do have listeners who do that. But people go in and out through the day, and this is with every radio show going. Jeremiah mentioned something about visibility, and I kind of get a little bit more theoretical, but I do want to get practical with how we use social media and how we can interact with you guys with it. Part of our strategy is to reach a wider audience into the mainstream. Not the mainstream media, but the mainstream audience. So that, if they're listening to the 6 o'clock news and they see an Occupy protest and it's framed in a certain way, they're automatically going to have some impression about that. But if they're hearing stories, if they're hearing what's going on, if they're hearing the issues at hand, over and over and over, they're going to start to realize. Now, a lot of our audience are already on board with what we preach, but there's people who flip through the channels and hear us and automatically assume that we're a conservative talk radio show because of the way that we sound. And some of them don't like it, and some of them are confused, and some of them don't like it and still listen to us. So
a lot of them. A lot of them, they say, they flip through and then turn back and go, is this guy still on? And then they're like, is he talking about gay marriage? Right? He sounds like the Beck and Savage in that kind of tone. I think he just talked about cooperatives, right? It's like, oh my God, what are they doing?
So I think that's a good strategy. And there's media theory, we studied it, and there's a couple media theory gurus that I like, and I hope to study later on in grad school. But with Paleo Radio, with Occupy, I guess a little bit about the social media stuff. We're still learning this stuff. We've discovered that Facebook is not as useful as we thought it was, and Twitter is way more useful. We last week, we're still Saturday, so last week we were talking about the Trayvon Martin case, And, well, I prepare show notes as soon as I can before the show, so I can promote it to people by email and different things like that. And like, if there's an issue that we're talking about, I'll target it to people who I think might be interested in that topic and try and ask their opinion and things and call the show and stuff like that. During the show, I'm updating show notes in real time so that we know we have what the topics are, the guests, the links, all that stuff. I'm also tweeting in real time during the show. I'm also pushing buttons and making sure everything's on air and all that. And we tweeted out, I tweeted out to Rainbow Push and a bunch of other groups that I thought in my mind might be interested in this Trayvon Martin case. Rainbow Push contacted us. They wanted to be on the show about emergency financial managers, mainly. They talked about some other things too. Wednesday. And they promoted an event that was taking place, what was it?
Thursday and Friday.
Thursday and Friday.
Yeah.
And then something came out of that event, a youth rally was announced, and they wanted to let us and our listeners know about that youth rally. So they called us, and they were on the show again.
We were the first group they contacted.
Right.
And I mentioned, I said, well, you know, what about, I mean, we're having Rainbow Push. This isn't chump change. I mean, this is a real organization. And I said, well, you know, what about Matt Allen Schultz? And they'd start laughing. And they said, really? Mm-hmm. You know, and they said, and in their mind, she goes, man, she said, Pastor Bullock, he liked the show so much and the interview so much that I get a text from her. She's actually in church, and I would never tell the pastor she did this, but she was in church, his assistant, and she goes, Pastor Bullock, you know, he mentioned this event. He announced that we're going to be doing a national youth rally, a youth march, and is there any way he can be on your show? And then she like goes, please? Like it was this like the one thing, and I'm thinking like, yeah, let me work you into my schedule. Like I'm thinking like, dude, I'll pretend, okay? Like yes, of course, we'll find out a place. And so we brought him back in. He loved it so much that they ended up calling us yesterday. I was on my way here. They called me on my way here, and they said, you know, we really like what you're doing. He called in, he heard the monologue before he got on the air because he was on hold and he can hear what's going on. He heard the monologue, and he was so impressed by it and so impressed by this, and he heard the podcast. He wants Paleo Radio to be involved in the push to get the Youth Rally national. And so we're going to be working with them, maybe traveling to Detroit, things of this nature. And so people are catching on. They're realizing it's a valuable tool. Judge and Sarah, they came into the program. We treated them, hopefully, with cheers and embrace. Where's Sarah in here? Yeah. I don't know if Sarah's in here.
Which Sarah?
Yeah. Anyway, Sarah, she was a little bit nervous. You know, and we've had people come in who are nervous. And we do our best to accommodate and to integrate them and get them involved. But people are starting to realize the value of knowing that there's a forum that they can go to, whether in studio or out of studio, that says, you know what, not only will these guys potentially give us time, not only will they talk about our links if we post them on their wall, they'll talk about us in real time. Like if people are listening to the show and they post on our page, like I will say in real time, we just received, only if it's really cool, and I'm not going to talk about every one of them, but if it's a really cool tweet and it's about something really cool, I'll say, yeah, there's an article that was just posted to Paleo Radio. And by the way, Paleo Radio is one word. Okay, kind of like MoveOn.org, but not like MoveOn.org. and so Paleo Radio is one word. But, you know, so we say, well, somebody posted this recently to our Twitter. Somebody posted this over here. And getting it out there, and they know that if they want to talk about an issue and they want people in the community to know, it's free promotion. You're not paying us money to promote, and you come to us, and it's not like I'm like, well, you got to talk to my assistant over here. You talk to me. You talk to JD, and you come in, and it's laid back.
So how many has a Twitter account associated with your Occupy group? Just a show of hands.
Yeah.
You really need to have a Twitter account, and do you have a website? Who has a website for your Occupy? And a Facebook? Probably a lot more Facebooks. Please, please, please post your Twitter account on your information page. And of course, have a Facebook. Twitter is a really easy way for us to get the word out. if we had Judge on, when we had Judge on and Sarah, the night before, I spent 4 hours scheduling tweets to a lot of occupies in the country so that they could know that they were going to be on the air. They could call and be a part of the discussion. Now, nobody called, but we did pick up some followers from that.
Oh, yeah. Occupy Little Rock and Occupy Davis absolutely love our show. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they go out of their way and they're like, dude, we love your program. We listen all the time. And so other occupiers are figuring out that, but planning ahead of time, mentioning, and here's the other thing, listen, and I know we can say this, we believe it ourselves. People like to be mentioned. You know, like when people like our wall, we say on the radio who our new likes. I mean, it's easy now. I mean, I'm hoping it'll get to the point where I go, there's just no way, right? I mean, I just can't. But right now, I can. So to say, hey, you know, Kendra, or you know, hey, Tom, or whatever, and I say their name, and if there's something about their wall, and to communicate with them, and if people like your wall, go to their wall, find something like theirs, but not just like it, say something. Because likes it's like throwing quarters on the ground. I mean, it's like you can just walk by, oh, like. How many of us like things that we don't even look at? Okay, come on. I do. I know to talk to them, to communicate with them and let them know that you sincerely have an interest in them. That's really the heart of things with Galileo Radio. And we like that phrase, the heart of things. To say, we genuinely, sincerely believe what we believe. We genuinely and sincerely want to make a difference and want to stand with people arm in arm, fighting a good fight, and being able to look back on our day and smile and say, you know what, we did it. We did this, and we stand by what we did. We stand by who we've met, and these are people we take a bullet for. This is the people that we believe in, and this is the stuff we want to do.
I'd say that you can also hold us in check because there have been a couple of things that have come up. The Coney 2012 thing kind of took us by a little surprise. And there was something else, I can't remember what the issue was. But we're trying to be a little bit more cautious and patient with, in fact, someone sent us a thing about the congressman who took his coat off and put the hoodie on. We got that information during the show, and we decided, let's wait till tomorrow, let's look at this before we know really what's going on, because there's always this risk that we can end up promoting something that is not completely legitimate. So we're running at breakneck speed doing the show.
And we're looking, and people are, you know, and here's, because I only have a couple minutes, I have an interview with a station or a group in Detroit in 15 minutes. For people, if individuals want to get involved, and I'm not here to proselytize and say, hey, get involved with what we're doing, other than allowing us to network with you to get your cause out there. But, you know, I mean, we've got opportunities for people to sponsor us. We don't make money from the station we work for. We are afforded the time, and we rely 100% on sponsorships and donations. It's a nonprofit station, and so if we don't get money from sponsors, so it's not like, hey everybody, I'm making a bunch of loot, right, and my boss is going to give me a whole bunch of loot. It's reciprocal. Of course, if people get more involved, there is going to be an impact. The more people are involved with the show, the more sponsors would want to support us. The more sponsors support us, the more we're involved with other people. So it's reciprocal. And, you know, I guess the only other thing I want to say, and you can find all this stuff on our website. We have papers here for that. The last thing I want to say is this, is that we try really hard, and I think that this is a value, and I think Occupy does this a lot, just in general. I think our personality type, right, and I can say that in a way and look out at the people here and say, you know, a lot of us dress similar, right? We have similar interests. We're all here at this thing, but to try to find that, what we call the golden mean. What is the golden mean? That balance between reckless extremes, and to say, let's use a little bit of reason, right? Let's really put some thought into what we're doing to try to get beyond the brouhaha, the back and forth, the bullets across the way. And is it difficult? Yeah. It's a tightrope walker. I mean, if you're trying to balance the right line, you better learn how to be a tightrope walker. But it's a good thing. It's a good thing because it's integrity, it's honesty, it's truth. And if people hear that, they are going to listen. If they can trust that what we're saying is what we believe, and what we're saying is what we actually think is right, and not just right, but what we think is the best. They may disagree with us, other things like this, but then when we do talk to them about, let's say, Occupy, for example, it's not as if they're even going to question our authenticity in what we're saying about Occupy. Or if we're talking about any of the causes that are involved with this, Move to Amend, you name it, the Food Not Bombs, whatever that is, they're not going to sit there and say, well, are they just doing this because it's, some kind of a network connection? They trust the authenticity of that. When you do that, when people trust the authenticity of that, they don't have that wall of division between you and them that says he's trying to peddle me something. Even if it's a good thing, there's still that he's trying to peddle me something. If they trust it right off the bat, and if they know that you're not going to just feed them something because you're making, it's a lucrative venture for you, they're going to listen. And if they listen, they're eventually going to think about it. And if they eventually think about it, it is then going to be part of their natural dialogue with their friends. That is the best word of mouth. Not just telling somebody one time and inviting them to an event, but making it in such a way that it's a consistent idea in their own mind and in their own heart, that in their natural discussions with people in their lives, business, classmates, whatever, that it's part of their natural discussion, because then their walls aren't up either. And that is the most effective word of mouth, the means the word of mouth is out. And so that's what we do. We love to talk to people. Is there questions, I guess? We don't have a lot of time. If there's any questions, you can either talk to us now or... Yes?
If somebody comes on your program as a guest, how long do you keep them on the air ordinarily?
We
Not
have...
3 hours.
It depends.
we have 10-minute and 15-minute segments.
It depends on how much content they have, the nature of their thing that they're talking about. It depends on whether or not we have other guest schedule, and he has monologues, so and all of that. So it can be 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 40 minutes, maybe 50 minutes. We take our breaks very consistently on the show at 10 after, 25, 40, and 50. And some of our callers, they call just as we're taking a break, and then they're upset because they're on minutes. And so we're hoping that our listeners catch that feel. But it depends on a lot of things. But I talk with them and figure out how much time they need and that sort of thing.
And if let's say when we had Occupy, for example, Occupy Grand Rapids come on the show, we set it up so they came during the 2 15-minute segments that we had. So I had my monologue at the beginning, so I kind of talk about a topic that's generally involved, that gets people psychologically prepped to now be part of that. I don't tell them, okay, it's time to psychologically prep yourself. but you do that. That's what's going on. So you get them thinking about it, you bring them in and say, all right, talk about yourself, talk about the general topic, just in general, to get people maybe thinking now deeper, and then we'll go to a break and we come back, they talk about how can you get involved, what is the particular thing we're doing. So if it's a 15, we can do anywhere from 10, 15 to 30. I mean, we had one person on for 40. We don't like going beyond that because it is a mainline show, and this is the other thing, and I really need to stress this. He mentioned we're trying to go, it's like a mainstream in a way that we're trying to impact as many people as possible, because the fact is, the majority of people will not show up to a General Assembly, right? The majority of people in America will not ever probably go to a General Assembly, but they might agree with the ideas that are going on there. They have certain obstacles that they're not realizing impact the way they perceive Occupy. They don't realize that there are certain things that are done through media and culture and religion and politics, etc., that will impact the way they interpret or view Occupy, and so they'll judge it without really knowing about it. So with what we do, we try to make it in such a way that we captivate a very broad audience of people. Like, I don't even swear on the show. I don't have any problem. I don't have a problem with swearing. Right? I can do that.
We have a problem with our guests when
Your Governor Buddy Romer said shit on the air twice. I said, you can't say that. He goes, that's right, you can't say shit on there. I'm like, oh, you're a governor, man. Like, and so, how did you not know this? But to make it mainstream and stuff. And so, this way we're tapping into as many people as possible and trying to say, like, that's why, for example, I do not use the word teabaggers on the air, right? I disagree with the Tea Party on a ton of things. But you won't hear me call them teabaggers. You won't hear me mock, right? I might mock Rick Santorum, right? I can mock Rick Santorum. I can do that. But it's easy. I mean, they make my job cake. I mean, it's like they're writing my show. But you know, to sit there and say, how do I appeal to people? And that's one of the things about being transpartisan is, you know you're on the right track when you say you're transpartisan, and you got Democrats saying you're not, and you got Republicans saying you're not, because they think that you're attacking their team. And you're like, listen, I know I'm doing okay if the Democrats say, man, you attack us all the time, and the Republicans say, man, you're attacking us all the time. And I say, well, we're transpartisan, obviously. Okay, we don't have to like defend ourselves. You just made our case for us. Speaking truth to power, reaching people where they are. You know. So, if there's any more questions, Mike, you got a question?
Well, I just want to say that I'm from Grand Rapids. I've been listening to you guys almost from the beginning when we first bumped into each other in the movie. But you offer a totally unique venue for Grand Rapids that really has never been there before for local progressive groups to come on the air and talk about issues in their group.
Well, we're the only progressive station, for one. WPRR, we got Al Jazeera English, Tom Hartman, you name it, Occupy Wall Street Radio, all these different programs. But we are the only live, weekday, 3-hour-a-day, talk, progressive program. Grand Rapids, as far as I know, I don't think Kalamazoo's got one. I don't think Lansing's got one. Where it's
a lot of those are, well, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, where it's every single day, it's a sustained voice every single day. It's these issues, 5 days a week, live. We are it.
A lot of the
we are it.
Progressive stations have a lot more music. I like WYCE, but it's mostly music. They have a few interviews.
Is there somebody here that from Kalamazoo that was on your station?
What's that?
Because I wanted to hear, like, maybe if you got to go, then maybe
but
later. But I'd like to hear what your experience was as being the person on the radio show.
I'm in the media.
Yeah.
These guys are awesome. I've been on 3 radio stations. I mean, usually they're kind of cut and paste. You don't really get a chance to have, at least from my experience, which, like I said, it's only 3 experiences, so it's not like I'm the voice of experience by any means. But and all of them, it's usually kind of a cut and paste, and you just run in and go in there. And the one experience, and it might be cheating, but I've actually met JD and Jeremiah both previous to being in there. So instead of it being like the cut and dry business, like you go in here and worry about what you got to do, we're able to just come in, you know, say hey, chill out, and you know, JD came up and said, hey, what's up, you know, Jeremiah, so it was more, I felt a lot better about that because it was just going in to talk with guys. And then on the radio too, you know what I mean? One of the previous ones, they seemed really cool about what we were on to talk about, and you know, kind of went through with some coaching on us and questions. And then the other one before, it just came through and just we had no idea what to expect, nothing like that. I never had to worry about that with these guys.
And Chris would, I think, would be someone to talk to about talking on the radio because there is a skill on it.
Yeah.
I mean, getting to your points, not rambling, and all of that stuff. Like I ramble, but you know, there is, you know, there's PR people, there's professional people who know how to talk on the radio, and some of those skills anybody can learn.
I was going to say this too. We had a girl from Environment, Michigan. And she was, I mean, it was like a deer in headlights. I mean, it was like this number. And got on there, and she started out as just reading the script.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, towards the end, she sat back in her chair and was calm. Then we had Buffy. I don't know if Buffy's here yet. But Buffy, she came from Food Not Bombs. And I don't know. She was on the show. She was on the show yesterday. And she was really scared. Her voice was shaking. Her jaw was kind of shaking. She's like, I'm really nervous. And so we talked to them, or we talked to her, and we kind of calmed her down. And by the end, when it was over, what did she do? Huge high five. She was like, "Yeah, bam!" and gave me this high five. She's like, "That's awesome." And then we had Jen Shaneberger from WEMIAC. She was nervous. She's like, "I've never done this before." And I said, "You're talking to me. We're in a room with a microphone. Just pretend, like, literally, that nobody's listening, because we don't even know if they are." I said, so, you know, and so she gets on, and she starts doing it, and by about 5 minutes through, totally calm, and when it was over, she goes, "You're awesome." And she's like, "Oh, wow, this was so cool." And she just, it was a cool moment for them. You guys, Sarah was nervous.
Yeah, that's what terrifying about this.
Yeah, and then, but once it kind of runs its course and nervousness kind of goes away. And listen, I've been doing this for a while. I mean, I've been doing public speaking for a while, and I like that nervousness too. I get it every time, and it's a good thing. But knowing that you're talking to somebody and say, how can I make it really easy on them? And so you'll never hear me. I'll never be critical. I'll never be rude. And I always tell them, I said, listen, if you're on here, it's quite likely we actually agree with you, right? If you're face to face with us, and I'll let them know if I don't too. But I say, you know what? We are here to help promote this cause. If I ask a question that's a little bit deeper, it's because I think that maybe people would like to know that at a deeper level. But we're here to be advocates with you, so know that we're on the same team.
I'll also throw out there too, and I know there was another question over here somewhere.
Yeah.
You gotta go.
Yeah.
There may be times, and you know, I'm always, I'm always wrestling with the whole ethical thing. You know, when I come to events like this, I am not a member of Occupy. I have that clear distinction. I'm a journalist. And so there's ethical questions that always come into play that I'm thinking about. But one of the things is that Occupy has critics, and you have good answers for your critics. So on occasion, I may put a question in there for Jeremiah that speaks to those critics, so that you have the opportunity to answer to it. It doesn't mean that we're critical of what you're doing. It gives you the opportunity to speak to that criticism. But we're not going to hoodwink anybody, you know. We're not going to get someone on the hot seat and press them and beat them to them. You know, that's good. Good thing. Oh, was there a question over here?
Yeah, I'm gonna have. I got a little issue. I got sort of hit by a drunk driver, and nothing got done right. Guy killed my best hunting dog, leaving a hunting spot. And Henry Herb had the stuff laid around. He wouldn't do nothing. No one reported nothing on none of it.
Who is
I
that?
kind of went, Henry Herb's the supposed investigator. Radio Free Moscow.
Yeah,
No one don't. Hope people here don't like to correct it well, but they don't report the news at all.
Right. You might want to turn off your.
Yeah.